College life can be challenging, especially for Black students facing unique struggles and pressures, but you don't have to face it alone. Introducing ReadU, the mental health app created by Black innovators for people of all walks of life. ReadU understands your pain and mental health struggles because it's designed by people who truly get it. With ReadU, you have access to culturally competent therapists, stress reduction techniques, and a supportive community all at your fingertips. Get ready to join a community that understands you, supports you, and helps you thrive.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Dante Wade. I am the COO and co-founder of Reju, and also your host of Psych and Hip Hop. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. He is a member of the legendary rap group Digital Underground, a hip hop historian, an entrepreneur, and an overall brand who's still active in the space today. Mr. Money B. Tune in for today's interview. You're gonna love this one. What's going on, everybody? My name is Dante Wade. I am COO and founder of Reju, a mental health and wellness mobile application, as well as your host of Psych and Hip Hop. And today I am welcoming a very special guest with us, members of the legendary rap groups Digital Underground, as well as Raw Fusion, here for a follow-up conversation that we started a while back. Mr. Money B, thank you for joining me, good brother.
Thanks for having me once again.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Before we dive into it, how you doing? I know you had some family that you spent some time with. How was your family time? How's all that going?
They just flew out this morning. So, from I think that was Wednesday. From Wednesday
Mm-hmm.
till just this morning, we had a great time. We, you know, took my son and his cousins, took them down to San Diego Zoo, drove down to San Diego, did the zoo, we did the whole Sky Zone thing. They
Mm-hmm.
worked out together. What else? Played a whole bunch of Xbox and Fortnite and Switch, and we ate
Yeah.
well every night. It was a good time, man. It was a really good time.
Uh,
Oh, and then they went
100%.
swimming yesterday, here at the house, and it was just good.
100%. So I know you about to get that good. My guests are going sleep tonight.
Yes, but you know me, always working.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we could dive right into it. And I know previously we had a little bit of a discussion on the origins of yourself and music. I know you come from a musical family, music was always playing. And before you actually joined Digital Underground, you were already on the music scene and you actually were able to merge with them and create the art that many of us know today and the hits that many of us know today. So to take a step back and really jump right into that conversation. So, take me to the formation of joining Digital Underground, which was already formulated. They already had their members. What was that transition like, being as though you were already an artist, you already had your own sound, but now you're merging with a larger group?
Right. So we did, Fuse and I were a group, Raw Fusion, formerly
Mhm.
MGM, which was MGM stood for Mac Moan Goldfinger. That was DJ Fuse's original name, or before Fuse, and Money B, MGM. And I wouldn't say we were on the scene. We were on the local scene, but we were
Mhm.
trying to get into the music business. So we were performing talent shows and taking our demo up to college radio and just anywhere where we could be seen or heard, performing at churches, wherever we could be
Yeah.
seen, we were doing it. And, and being on the scene, it just so happened that, um, there was another group, Digital Underground, who had a single out called Underwater Rhymes. They were promoting their single, and we were we were opening for them, and they were mutual friends. Digital Underground needed a DJ.
Mhm.
Our DJ Fuse was one of the recognized DJs in the Bay Area at the time as being
Mhm.
one of the best, and they wanted him. And after we had a meeting, it was decided like, yeah, we'll work with you guys, but you also have to work with us, meaning we are a team, we are a group, being Fuse, and it's us or nothing. in a sense. And
Mhm.
I used to always tell the story that Shock didn't really like West Coast rappers, and he really wasn't into it. But much later, just a little time before he passed, we had a conversation. He was like, "Yo, if I thought you was whack, y'all wouldn't have been in a group."
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, he wanted Fuse, but he thought that us as a collective or as a group, we fit what Digital Underground was doing. And so once we got in the group, that's when everything started to take off. Like I said, they needed me to make it to make it complete. But that's why the iteration that people recognized, know, and first saw was myself, Shock G, DJ Fuse, and Chop Master J, and then of course Humpty Hump. Right, that people know as the original members, and for all intents and purposes, we are the founding fathers of Digital Underground.
Absolutely. And I got to say, they made an excellent choice in bringing both of you on. And there's a lot to unpack behind what you just said. But one thing that really stuck out to me is the loyalty that you and DJ Fuse had with one another. Because in many situations, one person may be getting put on and they'll say, all right, let me go get the bag. Let me go formulate myself with this group. And even though I've been aligned with my brother for so long, let me go out for me. So tell me a little bit about that loyalty that y'all had for one another and why it was so important for y'all to stick together with the ventures that you had in music.
Well, it's just the bond that we have and still have. So, full disclosure, um, the family that just left was Fuse's
Mhm.
wife and his two kids that
Oh, that's
that
awesome.
I consider my family. And
Yeah.
Fuse is in Europe right now DJing for the Loonies. They're on
Mhm.
tour, but we're so close that his family is my family. So they came down. My son wanted to spend time with his cousins, DJ Fuse's son, and that's how deep it is. So from and we built that brotherhood, camaraderie, just because we sort of started on this hip hop path together, right? And we both had the sort of like the same dream at the same time. And at that time, we just all out supported each other, right? Meaning that in the beginning, I did whatever I could to make myself available when he had time for us to work, and I would go and spend the night um, where he stayed, where he lived, and then once he moved from there, he actually um, ended up renting a room in my mom's apartment. So we lived together while we were working on our first demos. So he was in, we combined all of our equipment, our 4 tracks, and I had one turntable. He had and a cassette deck. He had two, he was a DJ, so he had the setup. But I had the stereo system. Then we spent our money. We bought a 4 track together. Then we saved up enough money to buy our first SB12. Then we bought an 808. So we built from the ground up. We built what we created, and what we sort of you know what we own and what our legacy is. We built that together when we started together. So it started out as a dream. We both believed in our dream. We both believed in each other, and we went for it. And you know, and I think both of us are, at heart, we're good. Good people sort of find good people, and he's a great human. I like to think or try to be a good human, and
Mhm.
here we are.
Yeah. 100%. And it's really a beautiful story about the loyalty, the friendship, and the love y'all have that not only you guys formulated, but your families do, and it transcends generations. So it's
Right.
good. And you mentioned good people find good people, and that's so important, especially in not only just the music industry, but any industry. You want to surround yourself with good people, and that
Right.
longevity, that loyalty only breeds success. So I'm happy for y'all. The formulation of the relationship happened before my time, before any of us heard of Digital Underground. But I'm so happy that y'all were able to formulate that friendship and still have that friendship. But
Right.
to transition a little bit to Digital Underground, so Digital Underground has a very unique sound. And you guys were able to merge funk and hip hop, or P funk, as they were calling it, with the essence of George Clinton in Parliament, that upbeat, that fun type of style. And it's different, and you didn't really see a lot of groups embodying that essence that you guys had. So was the fusion of hip hop and funk something that you guys did intentionally, or did it just happen because you guys loved the music and that's just what cooked up when you were in the studio?
I think it a little bit of both, meaning because Shock. Well, all of us were huge fans of Parliament and P Funk, coming
Mhm.
up, but I think Shock, he embodied it. He wasn't just a fan of it; he actually was it. So what a funketeer was, that's what Shock was. That's why when we finally did meet um, George Clinton, uh, he called Shock up until he passed one of his sons. He treated him like a son. Like when they've, the story is when George first heard Digital Underground, the guys in Parliament and Funkadelic was like, hey, it's not somebody just sampling us, it's somebody making funk in hip hop.
Yeah.
So they recognize it and appreciate it when they heard it. And it really was the truth. Um, Shock was the is it called the embodiment of funk? He
I'm picking
lived,
up what you're
breathed,
putting down.
and he lived and breathed it, right? So when you say, was it something planned? No, but yes, because that's what he was. So he was gonna add that in it. The element that I brought was probably more of the boom bap aspect of it, because I was super just straight up hip hop. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
going back to, Cold Crush, Crash Crew, you know, all of that stuff. And then Fuse, he had all of those records, but he had a huge um, funk. He had a huge funk collection, but also some um, some rock influence, rock records, and John Master Jay. His dad was a jazz musician, and I was, and I've always been a fan of reggae and dancehall music. So all of that sort of, we all bought an element that we could sprinkle in with anything and everything that we did, but but not because like I'm saying in a bad way, but because you know Shock G was the visionary of the group, and his
Yeah.
strongest influence was the funk. That's really what it was going to be. We all loved it, but he led it for sure.
Um, Absolutely. And as with many new things, sometimes it's met with, great applause, opening arms and welcome. And sometimes many new things are welcomed with opposition, criticism, adversity. So I know there's always a blending of the two, but as you guys were getting kicked off, do you feel like there was more adversity, more what is this new thing, or more of a open arms and people just adapted to it quickly?
It's really a hard question for me because I was living it, and I didn't
Hmm.
necessarily care what people. We weren't even tripping off of what people thought or who was accepting it. We just did it, right?
Yeah.
And in the we were accepted in enough circles and by a sort of like a large enough base of people that we didn't recognize the people who didn't, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I know you said it was a hard question, but I think you gave the perfect answer to it because one
Mhm.
thing that you notice is authenticity is It's hard to put a price on it. It's priceless. And oftentimes, the people that create the best art aren't the ones that are doing it for the crowd, but doing it
Right.
because it's in their heart to do it. So I think you actually gave the best answer possible to to a hard
Now,
question.
I do have to also mention so that that was the answer when it says for us as a group, right?
Hmm.
Because we, we followed the lead of Shot. He had a vision, right? We believed in the vision, and we were like, this is what we're going to do, and we went for it. We did it. Now
Hmm.
there's a set that question can be answered separately for me as an MC, where as a young person I did want other MCs and people to like what I did, right?
Yeah.
So as a rapper, I was conscious or I was hoping that people liked my rhymes and when I rapped and what people thought of it, right? But
Hmm.
the vision of Digital Underground sort of like overrode that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So it was more about what we were trying to do as opposed to what people thought of me. Because I also believe that if we were successful, then people would eventually realize who I thought I was, which was a dope MC.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of that phrase, and I'm probably gonna butcher it, so please forgive me. But as the tide rises, all ships rise. And
Yep.
because you guys were a team, it was more important of what you guys were growing, doing as a group and as a unit.
Sure.
And that brings me to my next question because, oftentimes with groups, everybody wants time on the mic. Everybody wants,
Mm.
their verse, their 16 to be heard. So how was it balancing making sure that the music sounded cohesive, but also making sure that everybody got their bars off?
Because, Digital Underground was like, in essence, more like a, a big production team or a production collective, you know.
Hmm.
So it was up like so like I mentioned, Fuse and I, we were Raw Fusion before we got in Digital Underground. So even while
Hmm.
we were working on the first Digital Underground music, it was still understood that, we would work on this project and then, our management and all of us would try to make sure that Raw Fusion got a deal. Pee
Hmm.
Wee and Big Money Otis, who were in the group, they were Gold Money. You guys all know who Tupac was. He was a solo artist when he came
Hmm.
in, but it was always the intention of, you know, rock with this and eventually you'll get your own deal, right? Or we'll do everything that we can to help you get your deal. So we all came together, but we knew that Digital Underground was Shock G's baby. So we all came
Hmm.
together to do what was asked of us for that project or for those projects. And then when we got excuse me, when we got our Raw Fusion deal or our Tupac deal or our Gold Money deal or Force One Network deal, then you could go off and do it the way that you wanted to do it. So it
Yeah.
wasn't like when we did the Digital Underground thing. It's like, oh, I need more. It was kind of like, Shock, what you need me to do, and then we did it. He was like the almost like a Quincy Jones of the situation, but he also played everything. But he would place you. He would use people's voice and vocals almost like instruments. He's like, I can
Hmm.
hear Money B's voice right here, but only for 3.5 bars. I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, trust me, 3.5 bars, and then you'll do 7 3/4 down over here. You know what I mean? It was a way of recording that I don't think any of us had done before because
Hmm.
as an MC, you like, I'll give you a hot 16. You want to get
Yeah.
yours off, like you said, but that's not what Digital Underground was. It wasn't a rappers competition or people fighting for space. It was more like we believed in this vision that Shock had and whatever we needed to do to be a part of it and make it as great as it could be, you know, that's what we did because we knew if that was successful, then we would all have our chance to do what we wanted to do as well.
Wow.
So
Absolutely.
we were Wu Tang before Wu Tang.
Yeah, 100%. You guys laid the foundation, and
Yep.
I smile as I listen to your story because there's a cohesiveness, there's a teamwork, there's putting egos to the side that you guys embodied. That I
Mhm.
think if more people incorporated it into their teams, music aside, into their own teams, we'd see a lot
Mhm.
more success. But to ask you specifically, we seen Shock G in the music videos. We heard his lyrics. We seen the vibrato, the outgoingness, the nature of it. But what I'm hearing from what you're saying is there was a leadership element to it. There was a musical genius element to it. There was a coordination to it. So tell me a little bit about Shock G, the man, and of course, rest peacefully. But tell us a little bit more about him and the man.
Well, okay. Answer that question. Right. So shot and a lot of people know and it always sucks when people admit or realize things after someone's not here anymore because he's we all recognize him as a musical genius. You know, I think that's fair, right? Because he
Yeah,
was, right? And he was an accomplished musician and he was a visionary. He was outside the box. He was ahead of his time. All of those things that we can say. But he was the ultimate artist, right? So, and a lot of people don't know, Shock did all the artwork on all of our single covers. So that the Boogie
really.
Dance image, he drew that. He drew the Do What You Like cover. He drew any animation that you saw on Digital Underground, Shock drew it. The only thing he didn't do was the Packet Man single cover, and that was done by the same artist that did all the Parliament Funkadelic art. So we kept it in the Funkadelic family per se.
Absolutely.
But I'm just saying that to say he was a true artist, and really that's all he cared about. So and I'm trying to say this in a way, but some of you say a leader, he led by example, meaning if you're in a studio, if you watched how detailed he was when he was mixing music and how serious he took that, you know, being in the studio and the production and making sure everything sounded the way and was not satisfied until it sounded how he wanted and he knew exactly how to get the sound he wanted. I watched that and I sort of learned that and adopted that, right? So that's the type of leader he was. He was focused on the art and the music mainly, if not only, right? So, but I don't know that. And Shock, he was a fly dude. You know what I mean? He talked to women and all of that, but he wasn't necessarily a super social person. You know, he wasn't he wasn't in it to know everybody and to network and to do all of this and all of that and be in the industry. He really just wanted to make the music for the most part. So um, I think even in the group, we all kind of played our part in that aspect as well because within it, I was probably the more social person of the group, the guy that would know who these new artists were and who we should talk to and making sure that I, made friends with this, that, and the other, and kind of within our group would be the person that would sort of be the normalization filter, or I don't know how to explain it. Like if there was an issue, because Shop was like he was up here, like he was only
Yeah.
worried about how could we make Digital Underground the best that it could be. Nothing else mattered, and making his music. So a lot of a lot of other things kind of he missed some of those things. Am I making
You
sense?
play diplomat.
Yes. Yes,
Yep.
yes. So I would say, you know, he was the leader in how we would carry ourselves on stage and how with the music that we would make, what our what our image would be, what we were supposed to look like, what we were supposed to sound like, how we wanted to be perceived. But as far as, you know, this is how we're gonna react to real world situations, you know, we all helped out in that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that information on him. It's funny how we come up with our own perceptions about artists based off the
Right.
music they make and their onstage persona. But when you talk to the people that actually know them on a personal level, it's so much more depth than what you
Hmm.
see in the music. And that's why I think it's always important to have these type of conversations. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention another member of Digital Underground, arguably the greatest rapper of all time, Tupac Shakur.
Hmm.
So with him being a part of Digital Underground as well, what were your first impressions of him? And did you see that rose that grew from concrete that he turned out to be initially?
Um, yeah. I mean, from day one, when you met Pac from the very beginning, you instantly recognized his charisma. It's like from day one, when he was in the room, the attention was on him. He commanded the attention of the room. He was articulate, he was charismatic, he spoke his mind. He was very loyal and passionate. You know what I mean? So he had all of those qualities. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that because you have those qualities that you will become, what he became, right?
Yeah.
But we could definitely see the potential in everything that he became from day one.
100%, 100%. And it is beautiful to watch a story blossom from beginning and see what it turned into. And this is a sidebar, shameless plug. So as I was doing my research and preparing for our discussion, I was, listening to some Digital Underground, listening to some pop. And I didn't
Hmm.
realize that your verse on I Get Around, it was always one
Hmm.
of my favorite verses, but I didn't know that you rapped it. So looking back and listening and watching the video, I was like, "Oh, that's Money B right there." So
Yeah, a lot of
it's
people.
dope, but it's dope to see how even after Digital Underground, you guys went your separate ways and started, focusing on your own lanes. You still collaborated with one another. You still
Right.
were featuring each other on your songs. So it's really a true testament to how you guys truly rocked with one another. And was that
Hmm.
something where it was just natural? It was like, yo, I need you to spit a 16 for this song, this single I'm about to put out. Like how was the relationship even after Digital Underground wasn't actively putting out music together anymore?
Well, it remained that way, right? Uh, so, like, if any, even to this day, if any of our members say, "Hey, I need you to jump on something," I'll be like, "Send it,"
Mhm.
no question. And we set it up that way so that there could never be any obstacles. Like when we did our 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 deal, our Raw Fusion deal with Hollywood Basic,
Mhm.
it was written into our contract that we would always be allowed to record with Digital Underground members. Like, because a lot of times when you're on a label, if you're on Arista or whatever, you have to ask for permission to record on a Tommy Boy record, because it's another label. Well, it was stipulated in our contract that a label couldn't stop us from recording with any Digital Underground member.
Mhm. Mhm. That's awesome. That's awesome, and
Yeah.
it keeps bringing me back to the point of loyalty, the camaraderie, the
Hmm.
lack of egos that y'all have for one another. It's truly commendable, and I hope people that are in listening to this interview could pick up on that and apply it to their daily lives. But to shift gears a little bit, so rap, hip hop is always evolved from, the original Africa Bambaataa to Digital Underground to the early 90s, where there's an emergence of gangster rap. And a lot
Mhm.
of it is coming from the West Coast. You have your NWAs, Death Row Records emerge. Even Pac himself is, producing gangster rap. And that sound is a lot different from the sound that Digital Underground was producing. So, from your perspective, as you were watching this shift in hip hop and in the sound of hip hop and in what the fans were demanding and what the fans were listening to, what were your thoughts during that time period?
Um, whatever little mixed, right? Because a lot of the artists that were making that type of music um, were artists that I knew and were friends of mine. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
So I was happy for the success of that, right? To all of them,
mhm,
from your, you know, Spice Ones who Spice One was in a rap group with my god brother when they were in eighth grade. So I've known Spice. I mean, I'm sorry, Dell, the funky Homo sapien was, but my god brother Shane was in a crew with Spice because they were out of Hayward, California. So I've known Spice and you name it across the board. All of those guys that you just named, I know them. Right. So happy for the success. But Digital Underground was not about that message, right? And
mhm,
we were not going to change our messaging because there was a shift. So inevitably, you know, you can say that our type of music sort of like was overshadowed by that shift in the music that was being promoted. And I have to say being promoted because it wasn't like one morning kids woke up and said, "Hey, we don't want to hear Public Enemy anymore." It was intentional of the music that was being allowed to be heard on radio. We can go
mhm.
into a much deeper conversation about that. And I've actually talked with friends of mine who were record execs that told me there were meetings that said like, "Hey, this is what we want these people to hear and to emulate." So even though it's like, yeah, it's great for your cats like Snoop and whoever to come up, but but that messaging was purposely redirected to our community, and
Mhm.
oddly enough, at the same time, these industrial prisons are being built that they had to fill. So now let's only give them this message about killing and robbing and committing crimes and doing all of this. It didn't happen. It didn't happen by accident.
100%.
So
100%.
so
And
there was nothing that we could do about it. But I'm happy that we stayed true to who we were.
100%. And, you know, I know it's a much deeper conversation, and
Right.
it could be a whole segment based off of this topic alone. But to be brief on it, why do you think there was a sudden push for this shift?
Well, I just told you, prisons were being built that needed to be filled, and
Mhm,
also you don't want the last thing that this country, our government, or whoever you want to say, powers that be, we cannot have another Messiah. Right? You know that's the government's biggest fear is the next Messiah. Right? Tupac almost and could have been, but we don't
mhm,
want that. We don't want people listening to upliftment and empowerment and you know messaging that keeps them out of jail, but also brings them together and focuses on who our common enemy is, right?
mhm.
So how do we distort that? How do we change that? By feeding them a different messaging, a messaging that that promotes violence against each other, that promotes
Yeah.
um, you know, being disrespectful to women, promotes tearing down the family, promotes making sure as many of us, black and brown people, get into these prisons that we spent all this money on. And so we can make money and so that we can have free, that we can have free labor, you know. Basically, if you're in jail, bro, it's like being it's
100%.
being a slave again because you're working for free, basically. And that's what they need. They need free
Certainly
labor. That's
do.
why these prisons were backed by Nike and whoever, whatever these corporations, because they were, all right, invest in these prisons, we build them, we'll fill them up, and now you'll have workers that can work for 8 cents a day or whatever that wage is. That's basically your slave. You work, you get extra time on the yard, but you got to work 12 hours and make $2. What is that?
Hmm. 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 And it's so interesting, the domino effect of how decisions are made and how things work, because naturally, when you emerge this new sound that has a new vibe, hip hop more or less starts turning into a blood sport, and
Mm-hmm.
musicians are now dying. And before, it's not that musicians haven't died young before, but now it's through violence, and violence at the hands of people that look like us. So during that time, and we don't have to get too deep into it because I know you know people that were involved, but how are you feeling as you started to notice that rappers are now passing away?
Well, you talking about back then?
Back then. Well, it's still happening till this day. But back then, initially, when when the emergence of gangster rap starts, and the East Coast West Coast beef emerges, and Big passes away, Pac passes away, like, how what were your thoughts during that time?
Well, my thoughts were the same the whole time. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's unnecessary, but then I'm not gonna sit here and blame it on that music because you know people in the inner city and people that come out of sort of like dire and stressful environments.
Hmm.
There's going to be conflict. I always said that if if golf was popular in the hood, then there would be a lot of death in golf. It's not the music; it's just whatever it is that we're doing. It's going to happen. Before hip hop, we were killing each other. You
Yeah.
know, that's just how it's always been because you put people in these sort of like these destitute situations where there's no hope, right? And now we're fighting for scraps and we're willing to die over things that that don't have the value of a life, right?
Hmm.
That's what happens. Just so happens that we hip hop is what also came out of the inner cities. That's what we were listening to. But like I said, if we were playing golf and then we were listening to country music or opera, there would be a lot of death in that if it came out of the inner city.
Yeah.
Um, Now, when it comes to the music, promoting it, right? And the argument is, well, I'm not promoting it. I'm just telling you what's really happening, which I agree with,
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna sit here and say I wasn't jamming to it either, right? I was
100%.
bumping all of it, right? I was bumping it, but I was able to separate it, right?
Hmm.
Like this is entertaining, but I wasn't going out trying to emulate it or to think just because I had this record. Now I'm as tough as that, right? I'm not,
Yeah.
and I come from it, and I know enough of the real ones to know that I ain't,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be, right? Because I know what it looks like, and I know what they go through. We talk about mental health and all of that. I know how
Hmm.
stressful that is. I mean, you always looking over your shoulder, and you got to. I didn't want that. right? Um, so it's kind of weird because you knew it was changing and it was different, but it was jamming, right? But
Yeah,
you never thought that it would turn everybody into thinking that they could do the same thing, right? So here we are, which is it's as worst as it's ever been. Especially now with because it's not just in the music now. Criminals or people think that you know criminal behavior can also make them popular on social media, knowing
hmm
that they're incriminating themselves and actually posting evidence on a social platform that can be used against them. And what y'all say? Clout chasing.
yeah,
Do
yeah.
anything for clout. Like they'll snatch a chain and post it. Look, I got his chain. I just committed a crime, y'all. Check me out. What is that? And
Mhm.
a friend of
And
mine
I think.
just really, I'll say this really quick about now, these, what we're dealing with now.
Mhm.
A lot of, I'm trying to think of who told me this. It might have been, I think it was my guy, Young Hump. Shout out to Young Hump. But I think he said that the problem with today is that you got the OGs talking about um, how they, how they was gangster and how they used to do all of this and how they could do all of this. Well, 20, 30 years ago, there wasn't a camera on every corner. We didn't have smartphones where everybody's recording it. And and technology wasn't what it was. So now these kids or these young people are listening to these OGs and like, yeah, I could do the same thing, but you can't because it's a different time.
Mhm.
Everything is recorded, everything is being seen, everything is being heard. And you know, the laws are different. Everything is different. It's not the same. You can't get away with things that you could get away with back then. But you know, some of us older people are talking about it and sort of like falsely um, promoting, saying, you know, back in my day we used to do this, and this was really how you do it. Well, you can't do it the same way. You can't do anything the same way that you did 20 or
Mhm.
30 years ago. So there are so many issues behind all of it that is wild.
Yeah. And this portion of our discussion makes me think back to what we talked about a little bit earlier and how authenticity is the greatest currency. But it
Hmm.
appears as though people are mistaking, instead of authenticity being the greatest currency, attention being the greatest currency, which is why you
Yeah,
have so many issues and why people will do different things on social media. It's all for attention, even if it's negative attention. It's like attention is, the drug that
yeah,
people want to shoot up with.
it is. Attention is the currency that people wish to obtain and at any cost, right?
Mhm,
And it's not worth it.
mhm. It's not. And let me ask you this, because you've seen all of these changes in the industry, and you've been somebody who's been intuitive enough to know that there's a larger game at play and there's a larger system at play. What made you keep going? What made you say, you know what, I'm going to keep fighting this fight. I'm going to remain authentic. I'm not going to change my style, change my sound, because a lot of people seeking that attention that we just mentioned would have done so in a heartbeat. Why'd you stay true to yourself?
Because I never knew any other way than to be authentic and be myself. A lot of times. So the other thing about in this industry and fame and whatever it is that the things that you can get from being in the entertainment or music industry is that a lot of people associate um, their self worth with this fame or their status.
Hmm.
They attach it, right? So for me, I grew up with a really big family. My father was always there. I had two mothers, So, you know, I didn't need anything to prove my self-worth because I had a very supportive family. I always grew up with support. And so I didn't need to prove anything. Like even as, I was in the streets, but I didn't need the streets to authenticate me. You know what I mean? To stamp me to have any sort of self-worth. I knew who I was before I left the house because that's how I was raised,
Mhm.
to have
Mhm.
self-value. So I didn't need that. So whether, it's 1990 and we're double platinum touring the world, or it's, you know, 1995 when I don't know what I'm gonna do with the rest of my life because, we just got dropped from Tommy Boy. I was the same person. I didn't need to act or change or do anything different because I just figure like, well, I know who I am. So whatever I do, I'm gonna end up doing something, but I'm not gonna change who I am just to hold up this persona or this image. Like I didn't build myself to be that, right? So, I was never identified with a specific chain or the type of clothes that I wore or a specific car, even though I had all of that, right? But it didn't define me, you know. So
Mhm.
I never was uh I never felt I never had those sort of shackles or chains on me to feel like I needed to have to be. So that's the
Yeah.
reason why I never was pressured into feeling like I needed to change. And
Yeah.
I know shock was the same way. Most of us that are fused the same way. Um,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean that you know musically we didn't pay attention and then try to you know make sure that we adapted and sort of always try to reinvent our sound, if that makes sense. So the
Mhm.
message never changed, but obviously, in hip hop, the sound changed, and you always want to
Yeah.
kind of at least know what's happening and sort of stay current with the sound. But that doesn't mean sound alike or sound like. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, for instance, in the early 80s, you had just let's just say when LL and Run DMC and uh, whoever was out, Houdini, whatever, there was a lot of drum machine sounds, straight up drum machines, and he had some bass lines. Then come 86, 87, 88, we started sampling, right? So let me even take you back before that. So Sugar Hill Records days, there was a lot of you had live bands, you had studio musicians replaying popular breaks, like Sugar Hill Gang, Treacherous Three, those groups were playing to live instrumentations. Then it shifted to straight up drum beats, Lin drums, 808s, and whatever, right? So you adapt to that. Then in the mid 80s to late 80s, then sampling came into play, right? So you adapted. So if I'm an artist that's staying in the game throughout all of those shifts, right? I'm gonna absolutely go from straight up drum machines to try sampling to wherever it is now. But I'm not gonna change the way I dress and try to take on be a new character and do all of this. So, you know, I think the reason that I am able to be around is that I recognize and I pick up on whatever the the new things that are introduced. I take from it what I need, but I definitely don't follow trends or try
Mhm.
to sound like anything. You know, I stay who I am.
Absolutely. So in a way, it's like the same package, but a new method of delivery.
Sure. Yep. You because anybody, if you're a fan of
So.
Money B, you want to hear Money B. You don't want to hear Money B trying to
Mhm.
sound like Lil Wayne or the Migos or whatever, whoever it is. That's the guy. Respect to all of them. But when I hear Special Ed or Karis One, I don't want to hear Karis One trying to rap like Drake. I want to hear Karis One. Now, yes, I do want to hear KRS One rap off some new tracks, right? But I still want them to sound like KRS One or sound like
Yeah.
Special Ed, and I believe that's what people want from from artists like myself.
Yeah. 100%. And it keeps that theme of authenticity and being true to yourself. And I wanna bring people up to speed to where we are right now. And
Hmm.
Web3 Money B. Tell me a little
Word.
bit about how you're utilizing technology and the new tools that are at our disposal to help keep the mission going and keep the sound going.
There's a lot of ways to do it, but one way that I'm doing it in particular, like you said, Web3 Money B. So I got into the blockchain and cryptocurrency and NFTs and all of that right around
Mhm.
2020. Really, I mean, I
Mhm.
I was introduced to it a few years before. Like I was introduced to cryptocurrency maybe like 2017, but I didn't really
Mhm.
dive into it till right around 2020, right?
Mhm.
And then I really got into, you know, NFTs, and then I actually bought me a parcel in a specific metaverse and voxels and all of that and volumetric capture, anything that you can think of. I'm interested in all of it, so I dove into it, right? So bring it up to current. I have a new project that I'm about to release, and the name of the project, it's called um, Analog Wishes, Digital Dreams, right? So you think about analog wishes, digital dreams, meaning, when Digital Underground came out, everything was still analog in the 80s, right? And
Mhm.
um, we had, you know, we were hoping and wishing that we could be successful. Then digital dreams is through what we did and going into the digital age and us being digital underground, all of our dreams sort of came true, right? So what this project is, it's I'm using uh, a tapioca card, which is a tap to play. So you guys now use your credit card and you tap it to pay with your credit card. So this
Mhm.
project is going to be on a card that it's a physical, tangible product that you purchase, right? And you tap it to your phone, and it opens up a standalone platform, and
Wow.
it has your content on it. So not only am I giving you 10 songs, but I'm also giving you um, video content, credits. You used to buy an album, you want to read the credits and who produced. You have the credits, you'll have images. It's a banner on it that will give you discounts to merchandise, like this awesome hat. and
Mhm.
and um and so I borrowed sort of that idea from Web3 and NFTs, because as an NFT, you always want to know, you know, what's the utility of the NFT, or what's the value of it, right? So this is the
Mhm.
same thing. It's just we're using fiat. You're using real regular money, but you purchase it. You get this tangible product with you have an album cover where the cover is going to be on the card, but not only do you get this music and this video content and everything that's on it that you can only access if you have the card. But the card also sort of doubles as a membership card, meaning you purchase this, you have the card. So now if you come to a Digital Underground show, I might say anybody that's holding, the ADDW card, come to the merch booth and you get 40% off of everything within the next hour just by holding the card. Or I'll say if you hold the card, if I'm in Chicago, if I'm in New York, I'm doing a meet and greet where, the first 20 people holding this card get the exclusive value of that meet and greet, right? Where other people would pay for it. So there's value in just having the card. But once again, it's something tangible, and you only get access if you hold this card. Now, when you tap it, every time you tap it, it creates a unique URL. So you can't share it. Like you can't tap it and then share the URL for somebody to get on the platform. It creates a new URL every time you tap it. So you have to hold the card. Right. So that's a way where now an artist can sort of take back ownership, right? Because this whole streaming thing where you're getting paid 0.00000, you know, percent of a penny for a stream. Like, what is that? You know?
Mhm.
So, I think you have to sell or you have to have 1,000,000 streams to basically make about $4,000, right? Well, if I'm
Yep.
selling, if I sell 100 cards at $40, isn't that $4,000?
100 cards at $40. Yeah, let me do my
Something like
math.
that.
Yep. 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 It
So a
is.
million versus 100. And I think it's 100
Mhm.
people that would support me.
Oh man. That's so
You know what I'm
innovative.
saying?
That's so
So
innovative.
and
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 it's
the
ahead of
value is,
it's
is
ahead
so
of
much
time.
more. Huh?
I was gonna say it's ahead of time because a lot of people are still depending on, the streaming, the SoundClouds, the Apple Musics, the titles, just people
Yeah.
are dependent on that. So what you're doing is very innovative. And if people are actually willing to put in the work behind it, it could be so beneficial on the back end for the artists, not just for the
Yeah.
labels, but the artists.
Yeah. Well, this is all about the artist. And so,
Yeah.
and the whole thing behind Web3 and NFTs was you know, it's direct to your community, right? Or your fan
Mhm.
base, or you know what I mean? So with Web3, I offer you something. If you pay for it, especially through blockchain, I see it immediately and it comes direct to me, right? So with this tapioca card, tap to play sort of model that I'm going to be using, it's the same thing. I'm selling it. You directly get this information or this content from me. I can update it. So I might just say like, hey, if you're holding the card, I just put a new remix on the da da da. Or all card holders, I'm having a private member only Zoom call because I have a show in Chicago and I want to know which version of the single you guys want me to perform. So it's
That's awesome.
allowing it's including your community or your fan base, sort of bringing them in and they're a part of what happens with your career and how you move forward. So, they can speak to you directly. You can speak back to them directly. You can share with them. I don't have to clear it with anybody. If I decide, hey, I want to give them, a new version of this video, go check it out exclusively. And you can only see it if you hold this card. So I think if I'm a fan of someone and I can have something exclusive like that, I jump on it. And it
100%.
supports
And
the artist.
100%. And pardon me if I missed it, but where can somebody purchase this card? Are they available yet? When should we expect them to become available?
It I think it's gonna drop because they're in the process of being made and duplicated. Like the album's done, I have all the content. I haven't even made the full announcement yet or given the drop
Mm-hmm.
date, but I'm gonna share with you first. It's probably gonna drop um in August, right around Digital Underground Day in Oakland, which is August 23rd. That's Shaggy's birthday, and no, August 25th. I'm sorry, Shaggy's birthday, but that's proclaimed Digital Underground Day in Oakland, and we celebrate, with Feed the Hood and the East Oakland Collective in Oakland every year. So I'll probably drop the project right around that week, but I'll start promoting it and doing pre-sales, and within the next month, I'll be doing that.
100%. Y'all heard on Psych and Hip Hop. We got some
Yeah, got it first. This is the
some
exclusive.
announcements
I was
exclusive
trying to
on Psych
save the
and Hip Hop.
announcement, but you made me let the cat out the bag. So there it is.
And
You know,
good conversation, sometimes things just tend to slip up. But I
hey,
appreciate
I
that
love
you
it.
were able to bless it on this platform.
Yeah, go
So
ahead and let the people know you did it
yes, for
first.
sure. So we're almost at the hour and I so appreciate your time. I'm glad we were able to connect. I have a couple of rapid fire questions for you before we wrap up. for the evening. So these could be just be really quick, first thing top of your mind. Um what's your favorite city to perform in?
Um, I have a few, right?
Okay.
For different reasons. Uh, I think my favorite place that I've been to perform was probably Japan. It's just
Mm,
the appreciation that we had. And this was years ago. I just
mhm,
remember loving it, being out there. In the United States, I think um, for Raw Fusion, right? Houston was always one of our favorite places just because those were one of the first places to really, really just kind of like love us. You know, Houston was
mhm,
always one of the places where we were very popular. With freaks of the industry, it's still, you know, it was one of them songs out there. And then Raw Fusion, if you go back and you look at record sales, for some reason we sold more records in Houston, almost as many in Houston as we did in the Bay Area, which
mhm.
where we're from, right? And then of course performing at home is nothing that you would ever experience. If you ever want to experience a Digital Underground show, you want to see it in the Bay Area
A
because
hundred
everybody
percent.
comes out. They show up and show out. We do
I
it.
could imagine that. I could imagine that. So your most fun project you've ever worked on?
Uh, Probably making the I Get Around video.
Mm.
That was fun. That was one of the funnest
Y'all look like
days
y'all had fun.
in my musical career ever. We had a ball. Yeah, we had a
Nah,
party and somehow a video broke out.
nah, that's awesome. All right, last one. If you can make a collaboration album with
Mm.
any artist that you would want to, including yourself, who would be on that collab album?
On a collab album?
A collab
Eh,
album. A song may be too much. I'm gonna give you a whole album. What artist would you put on
nice.
there?
Um, you know, for personal reasons, probably Rakim, um, Prince. Uh, I let James Brown. He'll lead the band. I have some
Hmm.
live musicians kicking, and maybe have a little bit of uh, Steel Pulse doing some hooks for me or something.
Hmm.
It'll be eclectic.
100%. I like how you brought in multiple genres into that too.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, those are all the questions I have for you, man. I appreciate
Oh, then I got
the
to get a track by
conversation.
Kraftwerk. Sorry.
Okay, track by Kraftwerk. All right. I'm glad you got that before before I started to wrap up. But
Yep.
Money B, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for joining. And I really hope that people are able to get out of the conversation today just the power and authenticity, remaining true to yourself, always being innovative, and just understanding that sometimes your greatest superpower is simply knowing who you are. So I thank you for joining, and I hope we're able to connect soon, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say, don't ever do nothing strange for change. It's not healthy.
Listen, y'all
Oh,
heard it
but
here
wait.
first.
Yeah, and I got to make sure everybody, it's the plug. So,
Mhm.
follow me on Twitter and Instagram at MoneyB69, and of course, subscribe and like, the new YouTube channel, which is MoneyB DUTV, DU as in Digital Underground, MoneyB dash DUTV. I'll let you guy, and that's how you find everything. And then shop at DUmerch.com. The only
Yep.
place you can get official Digital Underground merchandise. All right.
All right. Y'all
Other
see
than that,
that?
we good.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is Psych and Hip Hop. My name is Dante Wade. I'm here with Money B, and we're signing off the evening. Thanks, y'all.
Appreciate you. Peace out.